This topic is point-to-site VPN that we have already covered yesterday, but as I promised in next video, we will try to understand when to choose what. So if you have seen the previous video, you'll be aware here we are talking about the protocols and the authentication methods because these things will help you during your design considerations. And it is good to know there are various methods to use, or various protocols to use, but which one is meant for you? Which will solve your problem and why? All right. So let's start with the absolutely basic first, which is why point to site VPN. Of course, you all have the answer for it because for remote users, rather, I would say why Azure point to site. Okay, let's answer this question. The very first is secure access, which means it will give you the data, encrypted data in transit. Okay, then we have scalability, which means you have very minimal configuration changes to add or remove users. So scalable. And the third is flexibility. That is exactly the topic for today's video, which is works with various protocols and authentication methods, right? So if you remember, we have learned three protocols yesterday, right? So let me write it down. Protocols. What were three protocols? The very first was IKEV2, right? And the second one was OpenVPN, and the third one was SSTP, right? Now, when we should choose IKEV2, we have already discussed what are these, how they work, the conceptual work of these protocols. So here we only need to consider the design, why, when to choose what. So IKEV2 we choose when users need high performance and mobility is required. Why? Because this IKEV2 is fast and stable with strong encryption, of course, and it supports seamless connections. If you remember, I gave the example of if your network are switching from Wi-Fi to mobile phone, so mobility is required. That's your choice of protocol because it goes smoothly with that. So we should write here high performance. Second point is mobility, right? And if we talk about the devices it supports Windows, Mac, and iOS. So, and it usually goes pre-installed clients on many devices, right? But the main idea to choose this one is high performance and mobility. And of course, if you only have the Windows, then it's a different story. So we should also say it supports Windows, Mac, and iOS, and it is usually pre-installed. So these are the criterias to decide. Now, if we talk about OpenVPN, well, this one is good for diverse platforms. So users which are on diverse platforms like Windows, Mac, Linux, mobile, we should go with OpenVPN because it is works on almost any OS, cross-platform friendly. Right. The second point is if you need flexibility with the configurations or need to traverse restrictively through firewalls. If you remember the HTTPS port to bypass restriction, and it can be configured to meet specific requirement, right? So if there is a restriction, so it is firewall friendly, so use HTTPS port for it. So we can say flexibility with config, right? Now, if we need to talk about the third one, it is like users are in a Windows only environment. So this is Windows exclusive. This is Microsoft proprietary or Microsoft branded. No additional client installation needed for Windows. So Windows only environment if you have. So you can simply choose that one. And of course, a strict network restrictions block is there. It is firewall friendly, easily configurable. So main is the Windows only, right? We could also write like firewall friendly. The same thing applies here as OpenVPN, HTTPS. All right, so these things will help you choose. So if we have to summarize, IKEV2 is for performance and stability, OpenVPN for cross platform uh, and firewall bypass, of course, and if SSTP is a Windows only legacy environment, right? So you know now when to choose which protocols. But these are not enough. Under flexibility, we also learned the authentication methods. So there were also three authentication methods. Let's quickly go through those. What were three? The Azure certificate, Cert authentication. Let's make it simple. Don't waste much time on writing things unnecessary. Then Azure AD or Entra ID authentication. And the third one is the Radius server. Right now, when to choose Azure certificate method? Well, if you need device level security, ensuring only devices with the certificate can connect. Why? Because it's highly secure authentication tied to the certificate, like key we gave you the example. Or we can say no dependency on Azure AD or external servers. So it is more like offline capabilities. So that's why choose certificate for device level security and ideal for controlled environments where certificates can be distributed and managed. So, and why exactly this? Because in our case, in certificate, no user credentials required, right? So we can say device level security and controlled environment, right? Now, when we choose Azure AD, when our users are managed in Azure AD, of course, or if we need MFA, so we can say AD and MFA. If you have MFA, it goes wonderfully with Azure AD. It's a seamless user management by Azure AD, and it supports MFA for enhanced security. Now, it is also ideal for modern environments with frequent changes in user roles or temporary access needs. Why? Because no need to install or manage any certificate. So we can simply say modern environments, frequent changes, right? Uh, no need to install or manage certs. It is good for that kind of environment. Now, if when should we opt for radius authentication? It is simple. You need custom policies or integration with on-premises directory like AD or LDAP. So we can say on-prem AD, right? Why? Because uh, Radius server provides you that kind of complexity managed if you have AD, centralized control, right? And of course, this is customizable, so configure specific access rules. You can, it is more granular, right? And it is useful for hybrid environment. So we can say on-prem AD or hybrid environment. ideal for business migrating to Azure gradually. It is more or less like a legacy way where people are migrating to the Azure or cloud, or maybe people want a huge complete control through the Active Directory. Then it comes in picture. But if you only are Azure customer, you would not think for the radius, because you have a straight with Azure AD or Cert based, and you need not to spin a lot of servers like radius server, right? Now, if we just need to summarize for retention purpose, Azure this Azure Cert is for device security, right? Azure AD for AD management and MFA. Radius is for hybrid and custom policy requirement. Right. Now we have a pretty decent idea about these things for our design consideration, what protocol to use when, what authentication to use when. Now let's see, we go through certain how to decide thing just to retain the knowledge. So the very first thing is, let's suppose it's a Windows only environment. Which one we should use? If your answer is SSTP, then that is correct, right? You could use Azure certificate authentication with that, right? It works pretty smooth, seamless. Azure Cert. Then, if you have, let's suppose, cross platform, OpenVPN with Azure AD works pretty well. But if you have hybrid environment, go for Radius. Now, if you have highly mobile users, mobile is the keyword, use IK EV2 with Azure AD or certificate based authentication that you can decide on device level security or modern environment AD and MFA. Right. Now, if we consider few more example like high device security. Now let's go with the authentication way. High device security, it was always Azure Cert. High device security, Azure Cert. What about user identity security? If we are user identity security, if that is the ask, Azure AD with MFA, MFA give you the additional security. Now, if we have legacy integration, let's say legacy integration, then of course Radius server is your legacy way of utilizing the VPNs, point to site. So legacy way, simple Radius, right? Now let's take another examples like if we have strict firewall or NAT, like network restrictions, so we need to use which one? OpenVPN will work smoothly because 443, or you could also SSTP if Windows only, it works for 443. I should write here network restriction, the conditions, network restrictions. What if it's less restrictive? You need to use IKV2 for better performance, right? Because these are inversely proportional. So what if we understood authentication protocols with different criteria than network? What about the management complexity? If it is a simple setup, another scenario, if it is simple setup, Azure AD is a good to go. Azure AD authentication with OpenVPN for IK or IKEV2. No need to spin up anything, no, nothing. Just simply use it. It is there to use. Of course, you need the VPN gateway for sure, but simple configuration with the VPN gateway, right? If you're using Azure AD authentication, then only the information of tenant and other stuff users are already there. Now, if it is advanced control, granular, then you always know the legacy way is always the granular way. So Redis, not just in this one, in any field because you are controlling everything, hardware, your OS, your everything. It is almost very granular. What if it is very low maintenance? Now think. Well, certificate based authentication for environment with minimal user changes could be a good one. Just need not to maintain, but you right, that is also Azure AD can also work there. All right, so we are pretty good with these scenarios that helped us to retain the knowledge. I hope these are some scenarios. Now let's end the video with some examples like uh, remote employees across platforms. See, that is the example. Like remote employees, just think what to use. Remote employees across the platform. Of course, you're gonna use OpenVPN with Azure AD authentication for identity-based access and cross-platform compatibility. I'm just trying to get this in your mind. Right. If developers needing temporary access, use IKEv2 with Azure Certificate Authentication for simple and secure device based. Because it is device based, it's mobility, right? So that's how it usually comes even in your exam when you go for the certifications. But more than that, it will help you in your practical knowledge when you're talking to customer, when you're developing point to site configuration for your customer. I hope it was useful. Thank you for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day.